Welcome to the Woven Energy podcast on Real Practical Shamanism with me, Joseph Sikora, and Damon Smith. We are here once again to talk about, you guessed it, shamanism from the ground up. So we've had a few weeks off due to personal reasons, which we may or may not get into. But we're back now, and we thought what we'd do is we'd get into, or we'd restart these sessions with a nice Q&A session. So one of the perks of being a patron to this podcast, which you can sign up and help us out over at patreon.com/wovenenergy. One of the perks of being a patron is asking questions, anything you like, and we will get around to answering them. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So I'm here with Damon. Damon, how are you doing?
I'm good, mate. I think on the Heretics podcast, I think I mentioned my mum dying, so it's one of the things I've been dealing with. I was very close to her, and so things are never nice, but she had a good life. So yeah, I'm sort of drawing comfort from that fact. A long and good life.
Excellent.
The patrons, we should definitely mention. I just want to mention some of the recent, either people who signed up or people who've raised their level of support for us. Thanks ever so much, guys. But although we read out the more recent things that are going on with the patrons, we always appreciate all of the patrons. You're a great bunch of people. Had a couple of patrons over in Cornwall at the weekend. That's Ricard and Sol. Shout out you guys. Thanks for coming, guys. Hope you had fun. I certainly did. And
nice.
So it's cool. We did some Charlie Foot and various other things. It was
so you get a community with by being a patron as well. Come and visit Damon in sunny Cornwall.
Yeah. We were doing a little bit of Malay shamanic dance at the bus stop in Bristol, believe it or not.
You get a funny look from the bus driver.
Right,
Did he
right
drive on past you?
Right in the centre of Bristol. Yeah, just a little bit, but it was good fun. And it's definitely a Woven Energy kind of thing, So recent patrons, not all of these guys are recent. Some of them are old patrons who've increased their level of support to us. But just quickly, Farian One, Dave Young, Linda Paquette, Sonny Jim, Colin Hughes, Alexandra McCallum, and Willem, or Willem. Thanks ever so much, guys. That's fantastic. Yep. And to all our patrons, thank you very much. A couple of people I think I need to let into the Power Patrons discussion group, which I'll sort out soon. But in general, the support we get off you guys is just amazing. I can't say thank you enough.
Yep, and a big thank you from me. And you can always go to patreon.com/wovenenergy to see all the different kind of perks you get. So, as I said, this week we're going to be diving into a Q&A. I've got some really interesting questions here, which we're going to look at. I'm going to say I'm actually suffering with a throat infection right now if I sound a little bit different. So I'm going to keep my speaking to the minimum, but also apologize for any hacking and coughing that may be coming through your headphones.
I don't know if it's coming through on the microphone, mate, but your voice actually sounds a bit improved. It's nice and gravelly.
Gravelly, yes. Gravelly
has
is the
some
word.
Gravitas to
it. Lower and gravelly. Yeah, I'll have that one. I'll take that one. That's good. So first question is from Andrew. And Andrew asks, could you suggest ways to practice Chalicity if you work in a demanding, high-pressure environment within limited breaks, say the service industry, where there is not enough time to get out into nature?
Yeah,
Are there any Chalicity building techniques that could really help here? What could Andrew practice, and perhaps where could Andrew practice?
That's a fantastic question, because I've been there, mate. I've been there. It's high pressure in general. I mean, one of the things that I did, it's quite hard to rig up, but this is you might have, we talked about black shamans at one point in time somewhere on the podcast. I can't remember when it was, and one of the tools they use is a mirror to practice their Chalicity. So you actually need, they use a single mirror, and you can use a single mirror, but one of the issues with the way that they use a single mirror, not to get into too much detail, but they have a bunch of other paraphernalia they use along with a mirror. What's much better is two mirrors, two small mirrors. And you know that effect where you can get reflections going on between two mirrors so that it looks like a tunnel. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
The light sort of bounces back and forward between the two.
You see them
and
all
it
the
looks
time in like
a long
science
tunnel.
museums. Yeah.
You can hold two mirrors in such a way that you get this sort of infinite depth that you're looking into as you're practicing your Chalicity. And I'll not give you guesses where I used to practice this when I was in a very, very similar situation, but it's the loos, right? I used to go into the loos and just practice my Chalicity in there. And on occasions, I would use two mirrors for this. And the bigger the mirrors, the better. But you can't, like compact mirrors, just two mirrors in a compact, you can sort of, if they're hinged, if there's two mirrors each side, you can also do some stuff with that, with bouncing. And all you're trying to do in a built-up environment is get that kind of feeling of depth or distance that you get when you're standing by the seaside, looking out over a lake, up on the mountain, look down. You just get that sense of depth, and it tends to draw your attention out of yourself. A lot of us, I think you called it the der state, at one point in time. A lot of us spend our lives in a kind of state that's a bit unhealthily inward-looking. And depth tends to draw that out. I mean, obviously you have to, you practice your breathing. You can practice just relaxing, practicing your breathing, counting your heart rate or whatever you want to do. And those sort of things we've talked about before. And just practice emptying your mind, but staring into that infinite depth with the mirrors is a really, really good, compact way. And it's also a proven way. Hundreds of shamans through the generations have done this as a kind of Chalicity practice. So, we have it on good authority that this thing works quite well. I think it does. So I think, yes, can you smuggle a couple of little mirrors into your workplace? I don't think most people have a problem with mirrors in the workplace. They have a problem with lots of things, but not mirrors. So, because you could just be vain, right? You could just be checking yourself out, you know what I mean? Somewhat narcissistic. That's what you could, So I think that's a really good one. Another one that I used to do is in a particular building. You can't always do this, it depends on the building, but if building's got multiple floors, I would try and get up high. I did this at Cambridge a lot, actually. They had a stairwell that went up above the university, up to this, there's a stack of meeting rooms, like they're quite posh ones. They used to the little sandwiches and stuff in them, but they weren't always booked out. They were usually quite empty. And there was a stairwell that you could go up, and you could go further than the top meeting room. And then there was a window at the top. And so I'm sort of looking out over the roof, over, again, a big distance. Obviously, if you can see the sky, you can always look up to the sky. And if there's some cool cloud formations or something going on, especially if the wind's going and the clouds are moving, then that can be quite useful. But I would say that try and find a location where you're working. And you don't have to practice your Chalicity for very long, right? If you can quickly get into a state of Chalicity, a minute is beneficial. 2 minutes would be great. 3 minutes would be maybe fantastic, And the thing is, you don't need a lot, just need it often. So what you definitely don't want to do is what I did in my first job. This is in the 1980s. You end up going to the loo for this purpose and no other. So practice my martial arts in the cubicles as well, That's not so good, But you can fit in little quick things, and it's so good for productivity. I used to get some of my teams doing this. We have a concept called no gray zone, which is, and it's amazing for productivity. Doing it requires a bit of discipline because it's quite easy for people to do to start off with. What it means by gray zone's where you're sort of working and sort of not working. Yeah. And so what I try to do with my teams is get them to, when they're working, that's it. It's all in. It's all consuming. They're totally on it. But say they take a cigarette break or other kind of break, or just an air break, or go to a loo break, the requirement for a no gray zone is you think about anything other than work.
Yeah.
And if you go say a cigarette break and you're talking to somebody there, you talk about anything other than work. The worst thing you can do for your productivity is work hard, go for a break, chat to a few of your colleagues about work, especially if you're moaning about problems in the organization, or whatever it is that you're discussing about work, or even if you're just talking about the work you've been doing. Don't solve any solutions. Don't try and solve any problems when you're on your break. If you can, full on Chalicity, no thought whatsoever. But even if you can't, just thinking about football or whatever you're interested in, basketball or, shamanism, whatever it is better than continuing to think about your work.
Don't do what a lot of people do nowadays, which is get out the smartphone and go and just sort of like flick between whatever apps and whatever else you can do just to distract yourself. This is rest with a purpose.
If you're flicking between things that are going to distract your attention and stop you thinking very much, you could be looking at, I think if you want to look at something on your smartphone, why not look at some pictures of beautiful scenery or trees or clouds or something like that, or even a video. Some fantastic videos on YouTube or, wild animals or whatever you want to see, something kind of peaceful. And that's not the same as Chalicity. The question was about how do you practice actually Chalicity? Well, you practice Chalicity by finding somewhere where you can take your attention out from inside yourself and just practice thinking of nothing. And we've talked about that loads of times.
Is there anything to be said about perhaps being in like a very noisy environment, like say a restaurant or a pub, where there's a lot of external stimulus going on and
that's not such a problem. Honestly, it's really not such a problem. I know I've said many times that I like to get away from the noise of traffic and stuff like that. It's really, that's the animist in me rather than the shamanist. I just like to be out. I took Ricard and Sol, shout out again, guys. I took them out on Bodmin Moor in the night, and we went up to the Cheese Ring, which is a big kind of rock formation up there. And it's just nice to could immediately see what this place, you can see for miles, and it's that perception of depth that really helps with the Chalicity. The issue is that certain images that make you think or text that makes you think, you can get into a mode, and I've done it. I'm no one to criticize, really. I've done it my entire life. Information absorbing, and even worse, an information judging or analysis mode in your life. And it's good, it's useful. If you want to know about a lot of different things, then, I'm not just in shamanism, I'm also into esotericism. And esotericism is this wonderful, massive, smoky subject. It's a quick plug for our alchemy tutorial over on Heretics. Massive subjects like alchemy that are just colossal and interesting and smoky and really cool things to learn about, but not all day long. So what I was going to say about the background noise is you can use background noise to help you. When you go into a state of Chalicity, you allow all of the sound that's there to come to you, but try to enter that mode where you're not judging it. Yeah. This bit of sound isn't annoying me, interesting me, catching my attention, or whatever it is whatever reaction you're having to that particular bit of noise. And you're allowing all of the sounds that come to you equally, and you're not placing any value on them. And some might be loud and some might be quiet, but they're all equal in terms of your absorption of them. And you will know when you've gone into a state of Chalicity, because you will instantly pick up on other sounds that you didn't realize were there. Sounds in the environment that, even if there's loud sounds dominating everything, you will pick up on other more subtle sounds that are there that you probably never noticed before. And when you start picking up on that, you'll know you've gone into Chalicity. So it's a good indicator of the fact that you've gone into a Chalicity state. So there's a few ideas. I won't tell you how I solved that. It's not going to be very helpful. Move to the countryside. No, joking. Half joking.
Well, also, I suppose the sense of if you send in Andrew off to the toilets with a mirror, part of the whole Chalicity thing can be tuning out the smell as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, you don't tune it out, mate. You tune it in. Yeah, okay, but maybe it's not such a bad thing as you think. Yeah, what you mustn't do is judge it. Yeah, if you want to use, we've done an episode on smell, haven't we? Smell and shamanism. A lot of people judge smells. Ooh, that's a really bad smell. Or, ooh, that's a lovely smell. And I like lovely smells, flowers and stuff like that. Just, oh my goodness. Nothing. Again, they buy these expensive bottles of perfume, don't they? Nothing compared to a flower, a real one, But it's the lack of it. There's nothing wrong with receiving sensory information in a state of Chalicity. Actually, it's quite good. It's quite useful when you get beyond Omska, once you get onto sort of level 3, level 4, that type of stuff, especially level 4. It's quite good. But you want to pick up on everything equally, and you don't want to judge it. So if you have the reaction is, ooh, or that kind of thing, the toilets don't smell good or whatever, that's not a very shamanic approach to your practice. And don't think they smell bad or good or whatever. It's information. It's sensory information that's coming into your body. And one of the reasons why we don't think about it when we're practicing a state of Chalicity, but one of the reasons why we go into a state of Chalicity is that we want to be able to pick up on those subtle cues in nature that the average person isn't able to or can't do all of the time. We want to be able to pick up on more of those cues as shamans, because that's really useful information to us, given that what shamanism is about, which is to help and nurture a small community. Having all of the information that you can about the environment that you're in is really, really important. And I'm going to use I keep introducing lots of different Mongol words, don't I, on this podcast? So I've got another one for you. This one's chutgur. Chutgur.
Okay.
And chutgur is what you want rid of. Chutgur is like that thing where you go inside yourself too much. All of your work is in your head. And you're thinking about it, and you're also thinking about your work in relationships with your colleagues. And
gosh, I know that feeling well.
Not in a good way, not necessarily in a good way, and that given that I'm the sort of shamanic business consultant, I often have to deal with managers and directors and people like that. I mean, it's lovely dealing with them, obviously, but again, you don't want to be judgmental in that state. People who you dislike, if you dislike some people or you really like some people in the workplace, once you go into a state of Chalicity, all that stuff is gone. Yeah, it needs to be gone, because all that stuff has a positive and a negative. It has a positive in that it allows you to do your job. And, especially if you're very passionate about your work, and you like, a lot of people, they like to do a good job, but that sucks them into what they're doing. They don't get gaps, and they don't get gaps in their intense effort, and their performance tends to nosedive. So you can imagine a performance of 100% it won't be 9 o'clock in the morning, because people are a bit slow in the morning if they're starting at 9 o'clock. It takes a little while to pick up to 100%. And then maybe by 11 o'clock, you're doing quite well. Maybe you've done 2 hours. You go for a break, but you're not realizing that your performance has started to nosedive, or you go for a meeting or something. Yeah. And you go, and on that break, you think about work, or you think about something related to the organization you're in. Your performance continues to nosedive through that break. You come back from your break and you start working again. Your performance is actually lower than it was when you went on your break. That's not good. That is not good.
I can really relate to that, because with what I do, if you run your own business and you are in complete control of your own schedule, it's very easy to get locked into that kind of mindset where it's just on your mind all the time. You don't think about anything else.
Yeah, exactly. But the more you practice Chalicity, the easier it gets to get your mind out of it.
Yeah.
The more you practice. Yeah.
And it's the beginnings of work being a workaholic, isn't it? And then your whole relationship with everything outside of work begins to
and then things like stress, heart disease. I don't know if we've told the story of Rosetto before on this podcast. Maybe we have. It's a place in America where there was it's in Pennsylvania. I've been there. It's a nice place. It's a sort of holiday area. And in the 1960s, maybe early 70s, there was a professor of medicine visiting Rosetto, Professor Stuart Wolfe. And I'm just using my memory here, I could be wrong about that. And he got to talking to the local town doc. And the town doc started telling him some pretty unbelievable things. And he wasn't too sure about this, but the doc seemed convincing enough that once he got back to his university, he sent some of his research students over to Roseto to check the place out, to see what the local doc was saying was true, and B, if it was true, what the reason for it was. And long story short, they found that this was at a time in the States when the number one killer was heart disease, which, as we all know now, which was discovered by this professor in Roseto, that heart disease is linked to stress. Mm. And what they found in this particular community is that hardly anybody was dying of heart disease, when in the communities very similar, it was a slate mining community, in very similar communities around about them, lots of people were dying of heart disease. And indeed, across the whole of the States, they had an abnormally low rate of heart disease for America at that time. So these research students, obviously, they wanted to know why this was. And so they looked into all sorts of things. Was it something to do with their lifestyle? Fortunately, there were kind of control groups around them. There were other slate mining towns around Roseto that were also doing the same kind of thing. It wasn't that. Was it something in the water? No. Was it their diet? They thought since they'd come from Italy, maybe they were still eating a healthy Mediterranean diet. No, they weren't. They were eating stodgy pizzas and stuff like that, you know. Yeah. And then they just basically ruled out everything just about that it could possibly be. And then it kind of dawned on them what it was. There's a church in Roseto. It's still there. You can go see it. It's kind of a pilgrimage place for people interested in agile working and stuff like that. You know, it's called Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And the religious people in that church, they had created a community within Roseto, or had supported a community within Roseto, where there was no such thing as my problem. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that society was very cohesive. If you want to think of this in terms of a working team, if I'm a member of a really good working team, my problems and my work, my job title and my responsibility, in my opinion, should not be my first priority. My first priority should be the well-being of my teammates and their productivity, no matter what my job is. So say I'm on a software development team and I'm a tester, my second priority is to do testing. But my first priority is to make sure that my product owner, the devs, my business analyst, if we've got one, all these different roles, systems guy, that those people are happy and productive and working. And if they need any help, I want them to know I'm there for them. I've got their back. And this is the culture that they'd built. If somebody wanted a house building, the entire town would descend and build a house for them. They were visiting each other. They were living under each other's roofs. They were making a really cohesive team. Not only that, they'd also create a culture in which the more wealthy people in the town tended to hide their wealth or tended to be modest about it. And they gave the poorer people in the town some, what you might call, social face. Yeah. Town officials like the town mayor and people like that would be elected from the poorer people in the town, not from the wealthier people. And they'd created this wonderful culture in this place, Roseto. Unfortunately, Roseto is part of a broader culture. And over time, the Roseto effect, as they call it, has reduced. But that shows you, the negative effects of stress or the positive effects of a lack of stress. If all problems are held in common, I've worked on teams like this. Some of the best teams I've ever worked with, for instance, at Oates, when I worked with some fabulous teams, all problems are held in common between the team members. And also, when a team is given some work, it's the team that's given the work. If it's a piece of, for instance, on a software development team, it's a piece of testing work and I'm the tester, it's not just my responsibility to get that work done. It's every member of the team's responsibility, irrespective of what their job title is. And in a way, as the tester, I have the least responsibility for that. What I have a responsibility for is to make sure that my teammates start picking up some testing skills. That's my responsibility.
It's really, really interesting how you're talking about this and teams, because we've talked quite a bit about this kind of stuff and the agile stuff. And I took a few of those that ethos for my team who work with me, and just by applying some of those, like, just treating them like equals and just, and giving them autonomy as well to be like just you do what you want, you do you, and developing an element of trust, and not implementing so much of a top-down thing. I'm so happy with the work that's being done with my team and for my business. It's like I don't really have much to compare it to because it's the first time I've ever done it. But hey, I'm very pleased, and the quality of the work that my team are producing because of this is pretty good.
It's one of the first things that my teacher helped me with in business terms. I mean, I didn't start learning business from him. I started learning theodore. He was kind of spirit dance, right? That's what I started learning from him when I first met him. It was back in the early 90s. But one of the first things he helped me with, he's a very, very senior business guy in Toyota. He was. One of the first things he told me to look out for was anxiety. But not in me, in the people that I was working with. And what he told me was, if you see somebody who's anxious, and sometimes picking up on anxiety, some people are really good at hiding it, and you get this sort of self-protective shell that people put on themselves in the workplace.
Yep.
If you see somebody else with anxiety, one of the best ways to do that, to deal with that, is to find some way to let them know that you've got their back. I don't know how you do that, because you have to understand your workplace and your ways of working and what goes on in the culture in the organization and all that kind of stuff. But just find some way to show them that you're looking out for them, that you've got their back. That's it. That's all you have to do.
And you'll they're valued. Yeah.
Oh, that goes without saying. Yeah, I think everybody knows statistically the number one reason why people leave workplaces is they don't feel valued. It's a no-brainer. And there is that famous survey where they surveyed managers, asked them why different people left their organization, and the managers generally said that they left for more money, whereas they interviewed the people themselves and they said they were left because they didn't feel valued. So there's a mismatch in the culture of the organization. That's also Chutkar. Chutkar is not a positive word. We don't want any of this kind of stuff anywhere in our lives, basically, especially not our working lives.
Brain fog. Yeah. And there's probably quite a few English words we could come up with for chitgar. So should we move on then?
There's a million more things we could talk about that. Maybe we'll do a whole episode.
We've gone off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I hope, Andrew, that you can get some value from that.
Thanks for the question, mate. That's great.
It's a great question, isn't it? Okay. Next question is from Gabriel. And Gabriel asks, what are common indications of success or failure of technique in the first 3 stages? Could you give any examples of any tests you could perform on yourself to see if you have got anywhere?
I actually saw that question come up. I'm a big fan of Gabriel. He does ask some very interesting questions on the discussion group. So the easiest... Can I give so I've already given an indication today of indication of Chalicity that you're getting somewhere. When you go into a state of Chalicity, you will be able to pick up on signs in your environment that you didn't notice were there. So there's a great indicator of success with Chalicity. There will be things that you can hear when you're in a state of Chalicity that you never noticed. So one of the things, one of my teachers, we were sitting on the grass in the sunshine. This is up in Scotland. And then he goes to me, bird. I'm like, bird? Okay, there's lots of birds. I says, bird was there. Then it was there. He'd been tracking these birds in his sort of meditative state, and what he was showing me was that, if you get your Chalicity right, you'll know where all the birds are. And not only will you know where the birds are, you'll know where the cars are when you're driving and all this kind of stuff. And that gets you into... I might write this book on shamanic defensive driving. I think we've mentioned my lack of accidents in my life. It wasn't that I wasn't going to be in any accidents. I was able to spot the situations. I spent most of my last 20 years on the road, and this is my job. I'm a roving consultant, And I've seen places where I would have been in an accident if I hadn't had that kind of pickup from the Chalicity. But there's a specific example. When you're in a state of Chalicity, you will hear sounds coming to you from the environment. They're not sounds that you've created. You're not imagining them. They're real sounds at the environment. And you did not notice them until you were in a state of Chalicity. So there's an indicator for Chalicity.
Do you think one of the signs of success is a side effect of getting better at Chalicity, and that is you naturally fall into the ability to focus more and intensely, and you find yourself drawn into things more. Like one thing I'm curious about with you is you listen to a lot of knowledge and audiobooks in the car when you're driving.
Yeah.
When I do that, oftentimes I will tune in and out of what's going on. But I'm curious if the ability to focus on the task at hand increases the better you get at Chalicity.
That's possibly true, but I was going to give a slightly different perspective on that, because there's pluses and minuses to anything. Chalicity done properly, you shouldn't want anything when you're in a state of Chalicity. You shouldn't want to. You should have no desire for what's coming next and no thought for what's gone by. You're just hanging perfectly in the moment. Yeah. And one of the difficulties I have, I do, because I spend so long on the road, audiobooks are important to me. And probably the single main type of audiobooks that I listen to is Japanese language lessons. I mean, the plan is to head over to Japan next year. I want so much to improve my Japanese that probably I'm not learning it as quickly as I could because I want it too much. Do you follow what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, you can use a state of Chalicity to absorb a lot of information. But again, that's all baseline stuff. I recommend, if you train Chalicity, just to stay away from baseline stuff. I know there's these things, teach yourself Japanese while you're sleeping and all this kind of stuff. And they've never worked on me, but maybe they do.
I don't think that works anyway.
But the real thing I think we need to do, especially people who are in high pressure jobs in built up environments, we need to make time, and it doesn't have to be a lot of time. And it's not making time for ourselves, because that term, making time for yourself, suggests that you're going to go off and do something for yourself. You need time just to switch off from chutgur. You need chutgur-free time. That's what you need in your life.
You're making so much sense. It just applies to me 100%, does this? It's like a pastor tells me this all the time. It's like, Joe, you just need to turn off. And sometimes she'll look at me and she'll go, Joe, what are you thinking? And I'll be mumbling, writing an email in my head or something, and I'll just be mumbling to myself. What are you mumbling?
Yes.
And so my brain is just constantly on and active, and it's frustrating.
Here's an easy phrase that you can tell to anyone. If you're a shaman and somebody asks you for advice about work and stuff, just say downtime is not always downtime.
Yeah.
That's a really good way to think about it. And I think a lot of people, I mean, I've seen, with the kids, only one of my kids is still in school, but in school, what do all those kids do? They run out into the playground and they start surfing the internet on their phone and all this kind of stuff, It's that's not break time, They should be playing football or something, right? They all seem to be on their phones, So it starts early. And we start getting indoctrinated with chutgur as we go through our lives.
Earlier and earlier.
Yes.
This phone is a dangerous thing, for the mental health, especially the young people. Yeah.
And another thing in the workplace, going back to the workplace thing, nothing is more important than people. Yeah. And that's, when Taiichi Ono started all that stuff at Toyota, his first principle on which all of his other famous stuff, Kanban and all that kind of stuff, Kaizen, continuous improvement, all that other famous stuff he did, his first underlying principle was Ningen Seoncho, respect for people. Yeah. People first, everything else second. And do remember that everybody is people. If you're in business, your customers, sure, they're people, and you probably want to treat them quite well, but your staff are definitely people, and your suppliers are people. And just advice from me, try to treat them like they're people. They're not perfect. Don't expect them to be perfect. Their feelings do matter. It's not just about whether they have a positive impression of your organization or not. It's whether they get the warm and fuzzies dealing with you. I remember when we built a wonderful culture at this organization I used to work for. I've mentioned it a few times, if only because the CEO, was like my, he's not a shaman, but he sort of is a business shaman. Sebastian, he's called. He's an amazing guy, that guy. He built this fantastic culture within the organization. And we did very well with our customers. We went from nowhere to global number one in a difficult industry, part of the oil industry, downstream oil industry. And we picked up a lot of customers. We picked up Sinopec, for instance, big Chinese oil giant, as a customer. And I don't think it was a logical decision. I felt that they felt the positive buzz. People, you can tell that. Listen, if I walk into a coffee shop, I can tell whether the managers in there are any good or not, just from the vibe that the staff are giving me. They don't have to say anything. I can just pick up the vibe. I know whether their managers are any good or not. And the bottom line is we had such a buzz that the customers picked up on the good feeling within the organization, and they gave us a break when I think they wanted to be part of that. They wanted to be part of the people thing that was going on with that organization. And that was all built, incidentally, you want to see where to change an organization, that was all built by its leader, basically that culture. Sebastian, I know you won't be listening, mate, but if you do, I love you, man. So the proof of the pudding in terms of business is your marketing more than just, we got a great product and we advertise it really well? Yeah. Is it more than that? Is it people want to have something to do with our company because it feels great to be involved? Yeah. If you crack that, you crack the most effective form of marketing there is, in my opinion. Yeah.
I remember you saying once, you went for a job interview and eventually you got it, and the guy who hired you turned around and he says, "Look, you weren't the most qualified for this job by far, but yes. you had such a positive vibe about you that I just wanted you involved."
That was Ant, bless him. That was Ant. Yeah, Ant, if you're listening, mate, love you too, man. It's years and years since I've seen Ant, but he's another wonderful guy. He built a wonderful business up in Birmingham. Yeah, it's one of the most happy places that I've worked was that business.
So would one of the indications of success be how to put it? A more positive reaction from people around you. People respond to you more.
No. Don't go there. Don't go there. Don't go there. If we're talking about Chalicity, you're not into any of that stuff. Yeah. I was sort of distracted that I was talking about workplace stuff again. But human beings have been successful because we are group animals. Chalicity practice tends to break that at the edges for the reason that we want to get rid of the chutgo. The chutgo is the downside of us being group animals, but that's so that we can build the upside of it later, right? As we build up through the stack. Now, moving on to Amsker, I always give as a very easy exercise if you're getting on well with your Amsker practice. If you're sitting on the floor, can you tap out your heart rate on the floor without taking your pulse? It's it's a very easy one because a lot of people can't do it.
No.
But actually, when you've done a bit of Chalicity practice, it's so easy and you can't understand why people can't do it. It's almost like it's gone from quite a difficult thing to do to something that's bleeding obvious. It's not a difficult thing, but there's an indicator that you're starting to get somewhere with your Amsker. Can you tap out your heart rate on the floor without taking your pulse, without a pulse monitor? And if you want to test it, you stick a pulse monitor on your wrist. But I think these smartwatches can do it now. The thing is, you don't want to be see if you can record the pulse rate or something like that, because you don't actually want to be looking at the smartwatch while you're doing it. Because that's kind of cheating, right? But there are ways to test it if you're actually getting it right. But the thing is that you'll know if you're in a state of Chalicity, it's not like it's not obvious. You can feel it all over your body, the pulse of your heart. So there's a level whether you're getting somewhere at the Amsker level and at the The next level, the spirit dance level 3, you're getting somewhere where you don't. There's no Tyrak. You've eliminated Tyrak from your dance. Yeah.
I love how you keep coming back to Tyrak.
Yeah. I mean, if there is Tyrak, it's there for a reason. Yeah. Tyrak.
And we should just say Tyrak is cutting the flow of movement, right? Tyrak is a
cutting the flow of the energy, cutting the flow of the energy or the momentum. Yeah. So there's, for the first 3 levels, which is what the question was, there's 3. I mean, there's lots more indicators. I mean, to be honest, Gabriel's question is that's a good question for a long series of episodes, maybe 3 episodes where we could go in that in a lot more detail and not stop at the first 3 levels. We could give indicators for.
Well, should we make a note of that for future episodes? Because that might come into the whole pitfalls of learning shamanism. Might be similar, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. We could maybe combine those. Okay. Hope you are happy with that, Gabriel. As we've said, we'll try and explore that in more depth later.
If he's not, he'll let me know in the discussion group.
He will he? Okay. So the next question comes from David, and he's asked 3 general interest questions. First of which is, how do the seasons impact on your practice? Or how do the seasons weave into shamanism? That's the question 1 of 3.
The seasons are really important in shamanic practice. I think we talked a little while ago about doing a walk for me to be in a state of Chalicity at the same time of year every year. So you can see the difference within the same season. But shamanism in general is all about change. And the seasons are to us, not to the universe. To the universe, the seasons are a lightning fast series of changes. And as I go through life, as you get older, they seem to go faster and faster and faster. The changing of the seasons is really, really informative. I mean, obviously it depends what latitude you're at and what environment you're in, but if you have the joy of being able to access some mixed deciduous woodland, there is nothing that I've ever experienced that has what do we call it? In shamanism, we try to not make human beings our teacher. We try to make nature our teacher. Mixed deciduous woodland is a wonderful, wonderful teacher because it's an environment which is predicated upon change. It's predicated upon the change of the seasons and the trees and the life within it and the plants and everything, they're all revolved with this cyclical pattern of the seasons. And they have their own things going on. And if you remember the episode we did about smell, there is so much going on in the air inside mixed deciduous woodland. And we've promised to do an episode on the scientific basis of the weave. That's going to figure prominently within
That's one of the questions, actually. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to ask that today, don't worry.
That is, as we said, that's definitely minimum 3 episodes, that one.
Yeah.
But that's a short answer. It's a huge question because I start going into the ways in which the seasons are influential on my life. If I was into writing books, I just have vision of my teacher had these old white volumes for Toyota philosophy on this big bookshelf. There's rows and rows of them. People don't realize how much thought the organization of Toyota has put into corporate philosophy. It's just unbelievable. It's just been that culture for a long time, And I imagine my books on the seasons dwarfing them in volume if I ever had the time to write them. Huge, huge subject. But I hope my brief answer is going to be helpful, given that I've got to pick up my son in about 10 minutes from school. I hope that's a cool answer for now.
I think it is.
Can we get another one?
Like we keep saying, a lot of these, and I knew this would happen. These questions open up more questions and more topics and more episodes. So they're good fun. If we get through David's questions, that would be good. I think we could do that in 10 minutes, hopefully. Second question, can you outline a nice example / beginner weekly schedule of practice?
Oh, yes, I definitely can. Please, please, please don't have a schedule of practice.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that, yeah.
That's the opposite of a shaman's technique. Do things because you want to do them. Do them because you're inspired to do them. At that moment, in that moment, at the bus stop, as we were, it was just yesterday, at the bus stop in Bristol, or wherever you are, do them because you're inspired to do them. You know, one of the things you can do as a shaman is you can go out not intending to do a particular type of shamanic practice. I go out on the moor, or you go out into the woods, or wherever you go, up to the stone circle or whatever. Don't go with an intention in mind. Just go. The shamanic, the environment will tell you what you want to practice.
Because you'll
be so enthused about it. Yes. So yeah, I don't think it's a bad question because, you know, having a schedule for practice for something like Charlie Foot or something is probably a really good idea for me, you know, to not die of old age.
Well, it's
too
interesting
quickly,
because with the piano, I teach people a mixture of both. I say you have to have an unscheduled schedule, you know, an unscheduled schedule, you know, and make sure you bring in an element of fun and play and spontaneousness into your routine because you do need routine. But you know,
you could have a routine like this. You could have a routine that I'm going to do something on Tuesday morning, 7 a.m. I'm going to do something on Friday evening, 5 p.m., something like that. You could have a schedule like that, but don't put what that something is into the schedule, and don't even decide when you're going out the door to go and find yourself somewhere to practice, or even if you're practicing in your room, decide when you get there. And if you can, just let the environment help you decide.
Well,
if
I was
you see a lovely
that.
tree, do something with that tree. If you see a tree that takes your fancy, do something with that tree. If you're for instance, if you go into the beach, what are the waves like? Maybe you want to play with the waves. Maybe the waves are boring. Maybe you want to practice your Chalicity looking out over the sea because there's not much going on with waves and stuff like that. Or, you know, if there's big breakers coming in, maybe you want to do your spirit dance, plunging through them, you know. All this kind of stuff, you let the environment decide for you, but it has to be something that you're taken with. Allow nature to enchant you. We used to use this term enchantment to try and describe the shamanistic state of mind. It was one of the words that we use the term enchanted mind. We're trying to describe that Tosheltine kind of attitude. Tosheltine's a way better word than enchanted mind, has to be said. But that's the thing. So yeah, no problem with having a schedule. But what I'm saying is, don't decide what you're going to do, but don't do nothing. And maybe the idea of a schedule is good for that, especially if you're a busy person. Set aside some time to do something. Yeah.
Well, being open to what the environment sort of thrusts you into is a good one, because one of the things that I teach is like decision fatigue. If you have to make so many decisions, then that's each decision is a barrier to actually getting on and doing something. That'll probably apply more to the more logical sort of skill-based disciplines like piano and stuff like that, where you need that routine. But I'm just pointing out, rather than you make the decision, a good point is to say, let the environment make the decision for you and let that stress seep away, so that you flow into that practice or what you call practice a lot easier.
Exactly. But do set aside time. So the question is, has merit. Set aside some time to do something and put it in a schedule. If that helps you, put it in a schedule. The thing is with me, I don't really think about these things because I'm practicing my shamanism 24/7 pretty much, you know. So
well, it's interesting. We should talk about that. We should talk about that. Actually, that's an episode, isn't it? Talking about how you because that statement itself, I practice shamanism all the time. That seems like something that people would be interested in, because
but it's more like what the situation or environment enables. You don't decide what you're going to do. I mean, sometimes you can, you know, but generally go to a place and then let the place decide for you which of the beautiful, wonderful myriad of shamanic techniques that exist in the world you're going to practice.
Okay, conscious of your time, last question from David. How does shamanic practice shift for those in the latter years of life, e.g. reduced physical abilities?
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned what I'm working on at the moment.
Yeah.
My spirit dance, I took a decision long ago that spirit dance was not going to be my only shamanic practice, because that would be really unhealthy, but it would be my main form of shamanic practice. The spirit dance that I do is heavily Mongol shaman influenced, combined with a lot of stuff from Japan and China and Malaysia and Colombia. Let's not mention. Hi, sorry, shout out if you're around. The issue there is that I can do, because of my martial arts background and that kind of stuff, I can do some pretty heavyweight stuff. So what I'm personally working on at the moment is a thing I'm calling butterfly dance.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm taking out a lot of the heavyweight stuff that I've done over the years, and I'm replacing it with, but I'm not just ditching it. That would make the thing too simple, right? It would make it a bit boring. Yeah. I'm replacing it with a lot of stuff that Kato Sensei taught me years ago, like when I was talking about in the early 90s when I first met him. A lot of the Teodori and the Japanese dancing religion stuff and the stuff that people practice in long kimonos, the advantage of stuff that people practice, it sounds a bit strange. The advantage of the long kimonos is you can't move your feet very far. It's all small foot movements. And there's some stuff from Kempo tradition and other stuff that I'm copying, but I'm coming up with a kind of spirit dance portfolio that can be done with not any heavy duty movement. What I would say is my butterfly dance requires less flexibility and probably less strength than Tai Chi does, for instance. I'm coming up with something that's more lightweight in that sense than even Tai Chi is. So obviously, depending on what Tai Chi you do, obviously it's a Chen style lens, That's not saying very much, But even what I mean by any kind of Tai Chi, any kind of Tai Chi, something lighter than that. And I will be filming some of this stuff at some point, and I'll be sticking it in the patrons area for people to see. Maybe people like I have a go at it. I'd like to get some feedback on it from the patrons, because it's not my normal spirit dance. My normal spirit dance is Mongol heavy. It's, Siberian style, big movements, bonfires, all that kind of stuff. Something more lightweight than that for my old age. So, but the thing is, old age is a relative thing. It's like the turning of the seasons, isn't it? There's a joy in it as well. There's a learning experience. Me having to do this, well, I'm not really having to do it. I can still do that old stuff. I was doing Charlie Foot yesterday. You can do Charlie Foot. You can do spirit dance, But there will come a point. Hopefully it'll be in my late 80s or something like that. But it may be next year when I can't do that stuff anymore. But do you see that nature is teaching me through the idea that I have to do this, that my body may start, not being as wonderful as it once was. It's definitely not, It's very far from what it once was. So yeah, but that's all part of the joy of it as well. That it's just like the changing of the seasons question. It's the same thing, really. Don't try and stop seasons from changing. And that goes for old age as well, It's more about seeking the joy. My mom lived more life in several ways. She lived more than one lifetime. She was an adventurer. She went off and did loads of different adventures, Machu Picchu and the Galapagos and Egypt during the Arab Spring and various other things. I think I've mentioned them on one of the podcasts. Yeah. She did a lot of adventures, and probably she did, if another person, a normal person, the number of adventures that, I don't know how many adventures she did, 40, 50, something like that, in a relatively few years since my dad died, since basically 2011, that's multiple lifetimes worth of experience that she had, and this is one of the things that makes me feel not so bad about her passing, is that did she ever live, that woman, She and people noticed this about her, we weren't sure how many people were going to come to the funeral, and just people, it was just like they were coming out of the woodwork, It was a lot more than we expected. My brother and his wife had to make a lot more sandwiches than perhaps we probably thought we needed, So this type of stuff is don't try and stop the seasons changing, and view old age as a blessing, not a curse. I remember seeing an interview. Let's call this the final point, because this is beautiful. I was seeing an interview with the oldest man in the world. He was an American. Obviously, the oldest man in the world changes over time. It was a few years ago. I can't remember the guy's name. He was 115. And they were asking him, I think it was 115. And they were asking him, the interviewers were trying to find out what it was. He was bright as a pin as well. Sharp guy. And they were asking him what it was that had led to his extraordinary longevity. And you could definitely see part of it in his behavior. Everything was wonderful. He had what they call the gratitude attitude. He goes, I go out in the morning, I go for a lovely walk. I chat to the lovely people. And then he says, I come home, I cook myself a nice bit of fish and some lovely blueberries. This is his recipe for long life, a nice bit of fish and lovely blueberries, and going out for a walk and talking to the wonderful people in the sunshine or whatever, So I thought that was beautiful. And I'm not saying that that's definitely a recipe to live to 115. It's probably not. But it can't hurt, can it? It can't hurt, can it? It can't hurt.
No. And that there is a lot. There is actually some real science behind gratitude and the health benefits. Of,
that's
of
true.
Gratitude.
That's
there
true.
really is. So that might.
Well,
be
let's talk about it another time, mate. I'm going to have to shoot, guys. But thanks ever so much for listening. I'll give a final shout out to the patrons. It's so good to actually physically meet up with patrons. I love that. In the first time we've done it, but we seem to be doing it increasingly more. And Tamo's setting up this gathering of the tribe next year for the patrons, which will be wonderful. Anybody's interested in coming to that, then get on to Tamo. I've given details how to contact Tamo over on Heretics, so do check that out.
Excellent. And you can also become a patron at patreon.com/wovenenergy. And I think you need to dash Damon. So with that, we'll say thank you very much. And we will do another Q&A soon, because there are some more questions here, which we will definitely get to. So thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
All the best, guys. Thank you.